Moving on to, it was a very lengthy board meeting for September, and a lot of that was due to the public testimony surrounding Virginia Hospital Center. Let's talk a little bit about what you heard from the community during that public testimony, where we were, a little bit about the expansion, just kind of what happened with the public testimony.
Well, sure. Well, we had several hours of testimony from all walks of life in the community, both neighbors that live near it and folks that live around the county, and also employees from the hospital also came out to talk about how desperately the hospital needs to be able to expand. And I think that the board really appreciates and understands that the hospital has a very real need to expand, and we're looking forward to that opportunity. But we also felt on the board, we ultimately voted to defer the hospital's expansion plans for up to 3 months in order to allow the hospital a little bit of a chance to go back and work not only with the neighbors but with our county staff, and to look at some really fundamental critical issues here that need to be addressed. So we gave very specific guidance and direction, mostly centered around the circulation of the site, how the site works, making sure that the community has access to the site, that there's pedestrian connectivity through the site, and that's also important so that the hospital center, as they look for future expansion and future growth opportunities, that the way that what we do today fits into a plan for the long range for the hospital.
What were some of the concerns from neighbors of the hospital there that you heard from at the meeting?
Well, they ranged from, they ran the gamut, frankly, from height and massing, how tall is the building, how close is the building to adjacent residential homes, the look of the building, the notion that part of the proposal is, frankly, a fairly large parking garage, some of which is above ground, some of which is underground. So the hospital had already made some concessions to the community and had put more parking underground, and had also and reduced the height of that, but also that because there's an outpatient pavilion, as they call it, that is joined with the parking garage. So that creates along one of the edges of the property a fairly long, unbroken mass of the building, and that was part of our ask of the hospital center to look a little closer. Mm-hmm. Could they break that up in a way with some pedestrian access, get some light and air in there? Ultimately, though, I think that what you hear from the neighbors in the community is a general angst, an acknowledgement that, yes, the hospital needs the ability to expand, that you can't have a great community like Arlington is without a really great hospital. So an acknowledgement that absolutely they need to expand, but a desire that the hospital would be a little bit more collaborative with the neighbor. I think a lot of neighbors felt that they were willing to meet the hospital more than halfway, but that the hospital was not reciprocating in that. And what we heard from the hospital is that they are very, very focused on their patient experience and delivering the highest quality care, which is totally understandable, right? That's why I think that's the board's job, is to balance those very understandable, somewhat competing ideals. And that's what we've asked, that with our direction, we've asked the hospital to go back and the community to go back and work a little harder and see if we can't resolve some of these fundamental issues.
And I think it's important, too, speaking of the board's role, it's exactly the right question to ask what we did hear from neighbors. But I think what's really important is, the board really considered our responsibility not to try to split the difference between neighborhood concerns and the hospital's interests, but to really apply standards and principles of good urban design. Because for so long, that's what's allowed Arlington to grow and expand while keeping our livability. And a great example is exactly what Eric was alluding to, the sort of unbroken wall. We know that's not a principle of good urban design, that functional and livable communities have pedestrian accessibilities through large sites. There's light, there's air, there's visuals that you can see through. People might know instinctively that they don't want to live next to what feels like a big wall. And we have a long history of thinking about these things in terms of urban design. And so I think the board took, it's actually a little bit unusual, the degree to which we really sought to chart out in great specifics the guidance that we expected the hospital to meet in order to improve that design. It wasn't just saying, you've failed to work it out with the neighbors, go think about it some more for 3 months and come back to us. We really wanted to be very clear about what the threshold standards are that have made this community such a livable place as it's grown in the past and what we expect for the future. So I am really optimistic because of the specificity of that direction, because of the willingness of the hospital and indeed the neighborhoods to continue to engage, that there's a really clear path for this hospital expansion, which, as it has been said, is so critical to move forward.
So when it's going to, they will come back to you in December with a revised plan, hopefully.
So December at the latest, but they actually have the option if they can bring a revised plan that meets, again, those standards of good urban design that we laid out. Earlier than that, we're happy to hear it earlier than that as well.
Okay, but if it does take the 3 months, what are your options when they do come forward again?
Well, the board always has the option to, we can defer again, we can deny the application, or we can approve it. And I think we're all, as Katie just said, we're very optimistic that we're going to get to the place where we'll be able to approve it in recognition that the hospital is critically important to the community, but also in anticipation that they're going to do some of the hard work that they need to do right now. But we would always have the option to defer again or to even deny. That would be like a nuclear option. I don't think that's where we're headed. But.
Okay, well, we're going to take a short break now, and when we return, we'll ask the board members about their decision to approve construction of a temporary salt storage facility in northern Arlington. Stay with us.